So we need to talk about the red line in gaming. You know how in the movies, if you want to show something really intense, you just get an NC-17 rating and it's okay? Well, in gaming, it doesn't work like that. If a game crosses a line into adults-only territory, it's basically dead. Sony won't license it, Nintendo won't touch it, and Walmart, they won't stock it. It has this invisible electric fence. The AO rating is basically a death certificate for a video game, but developers, they like to poke that electric fence, sometimes for art, sometimes for money, sometimes just to see how much they can get away with. Welcome to the channel, everybody. Jimmy or Chaos. Today, we're counting down 20 times games flirted with disaster. Now, we aren't going to be doing anything hype today. We're just going to look at the mechanics, the history. We're going to figure out why these games freaked everyone out. And starting at number 20 is South Park, The Stick of Truth, released in 2014. Now, you'd expect South Park to be on here. You're not going to be shocked with this one. But the reason it's on the list isn't just because it was offensive. It's because of where it was offensive. You see, in North America, we got the full game, uncut. Both in Europe and Australia, the rating boards lost their minds over a couple of specific mini-games involving, let's just call them, medical procedures. There was one where you had to perform a certain procedure and another involving aliens doing some probing. Now, the issue wasn't watching it. It was doing it. The game made you use the analog stick to rotate things. You had to actively participate in the surgery. The European board said absolutely not, so Ubisoft, well, they had to cut those scenes out. But instead of just fading to black, the creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker, they replaced the scenes with static title cards. In Europe, it was a statue of a guy facepalming. In Australia, it was a crying koala. And over the image, they wrote text describing exactly what you were missing in the most graphic detail possible. This was what I would call malicious compliance at its finest. Basically said, we aren't allowed to show you this because your government thinks you can't handle it. And it turned the censorship into a joke. And honestly, reading the text was probably more graphic than the cartoon visuals ever could have been. Guys, do me a favor. Make sure you drop a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you have any top 20 gaming ideas you'd like to see on the channel, you let me know in the comments. I read every single comment on every single video. And let's continue. At number 19. Fahrenheit, the Indigo Prophecy in 2005. Now, if you were in the States, this game came out in 2005. It was a terrible year to be edgy because the industry was still on fire from the San Andreas hot coffee scandal. If you know, you know. Quantic Dream wanted to make a cinematic interactive movie, but they included scenes where the main characters, well, they got intimate. And because it's a Quantic Dream game, you can't just watch. You had to play Simon Says with the controller to keep the rhythm going. You had to match the on-screen prompts to perform. The rating board saw it, immediately threatened an AO rating, which would have killed the game at retail. So for the North American version, they panicked. They cut the interactivity completely, making you just watch a short cutscene. But the weirdest edit was the shower scene. One of the characters, Carla, takes a shower. The original, well, she shows everything. In the US version, they didn't have time to change the character model. So they literally painted a pink bathing suit onto her skin texture. It looked terrible. It looked like body paint. It was a desperate attempt to cover up digital skin to save the game's sales. I mean, it just goes to show how terrified publishers are of that. Well, they were and are of that AO rating back then. At number 18, The Punisher in 2005. Let's stick with 2005. Let's talk about The Punisher. This game was brutal. The developers, Volition, they wanted to capture Frank Castle's vibe, so they built a mechanic called interrogations. You'd grab a bad guy, drag him to a special spot where whatever special was, a wood chipper, a drill press, a piranha tank, whatever, and then you'd have to feather the analog stick to apply pressure. You had to scare him without killing him to get info, but once he talked, well, you could just smash the stick forward and feed him to the machine. The rating board, they called it interactive torture. They were going to slap an AO rating on it. I mean, Volition couldn't cut the scenes because that was the whole hook of the game, so they came up with a very weird compromise. They put a black and white filter over the death animations. When you finally shoved the guy into the wood chipper, the screen would snap to grainy black and white, and the camera would zoom in tight to hide all the blood. The sound effects, the screaming, the crunching, they were there. But because the blood wasn't red, it technically got rated M. It gave this game this weird aesthetic that was arguably creepier than the gore that would have been. At number 17, BMX XXX in 2002. This one's just sad, okay? This was a company going broke. Acclaim Entertainment was sinking. They decided the only way to save themselves was to pivot a BMX bike game into a mature title. The gameplay was standard bike stuff. but the reward loop, it was pretty trashy. You collected coins to unlock videos of real-life exotic dancers. Basically, a grind a rail, see a video. They even had a character creator where you could make the female riders look a certain way. So they managed to get an M rating somehow, but they hit a wall with Sony. Sony flat out refused to publish the game on PlayStation 2 unless it was covered up. So you had this weird situation where the Xbox version was uncut, but the PS2 version had bikinis painted on. Retailers at Walmart, they wouldn't stock it. The game bombed. It wasn't fun to play. The humor was like bad frat house jokes, and the adult content, it felt tacked on. Acclaim went bankrupt shortly afterwards. It was a good lesson. Throwing edgy content into a bad game doesn't make it a good game. It just makes it an embarrassing one. At number 16, Thrill Kill in 1998. We have the most famous game that never came out. Yep, Thrill Kill. 4-player fighting game for the original PlayStation. It was done. It was finished. It went gold. Box art was printed. But then EA bought the publisher Virgin Interactive. EA took one look at Thrill Kill and said, yeah, no. They canceled it weeks before release because they didn't want the bad PR. The game, pretty wild for its time. Didn't have health bars, had a kill meter. You fought to fill the meter so you could execute a thrill kill to knock a player out. The characters, they were themed nightmares. You had a dominatrix with a cattle prod, a doctor with a bear trap for a face. I mean, the winning moves, they were pretty violent. But here's the cool part. The engine, it didn't die. The developers took the tech, stripped down the fetish gear, and reskinned the entire game with the Wu-Tang clang. It became Wu-Tang Shaolin style. Same violent 4-player engine, same finishing moves, just with Method Man instead of a dominatrix. It proves that violence is apparently fine if it's martial arts, but not if it's weird fetish stuff. At number 15, Manhunt 2 in 2007. The first game was already controversial enough, but the sequel, it landed right in the middle of the Nintendo Wii era, and that changed everything. You see, on a regular controller, you press a button to attack. On the Wii, you have to move. Manhunt 2 had these execution moves where you'd use pliers or a saw. On the Wii version, the game asked you to physically mimic the motion with your hands. You had to make a sawing motion or a yanking motion to finish the job. Of course, the rating board saw that physical complicity, and they gave it an AO rating instantly. Rockstar had to censor the game heavily to get it on console. They added this psychedelic blur filter so you couldn't really see the gore, but the motion controls, they stayed. Even if you couldn't see it clearly, you knew what you were doing in your living room. It made players feel dirty in a way that most games don't. Guys, if you are enjoying the video and enjoying the countdown, please take a second. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, ring that bell. Help us on our way to 10,000 subscribers. At number 14, Night Trap all the way back in 1992. I guess you could call this the unk or the grandpa of the list. If you play this today, you're going to laugh. It is a very cheesy interactive movie about a slumber party and vampires that shuffle around like they have bad knees. It was rated T for teen. Well, it's rated T for teen now. But in 1993, this game was dragged in front of the U.S. Senate. Politicians like Joe Lieberman held this game up as the end of civilization. They claimed the goal of the game was to trap and kill women. The funny thing is, they never played the game. The goal of the game is to save women. You play as a security team trapping the bad guys. If you fail, sure, you see a scene of a girl getting dragged off, but it's less scary than a Goosebumps episode. That's the truth. Misunderstanding is actually why we have the ESRB rating system today. Nintendo and Sega were getting so much heat from the government, they had to create this self-regulatory board, and Night Trap was the scapegoat that changed the entire industry. At number 13 today, Rule of the Rose, 2006. Psychological horror game on the PS2. Sort of like a Lord of the Flies with little girls in an orphanage. It was creepy, but it was mostly narrative. And then a magazine in Italy ran a hit piece with the headline, "He who buries a girl alive wins." They claimed it was a simulator for abusing children. Now, that was a lie. There was a cutscene where a character is bullied, put in a coffin, but you don't play it. You don't get points for it. It's just part of a sad story. But the panic spread across Europe, and the UK release was canceled entirely. It's on this list today because it shows how fragile things are. You don't even have to actually break the rules. You just have to be accused of breaking the rules. The game is now a super rare collector's item because it was basically banned for a rumor and you can't find it. At number 12, The Guy Game in 2004. Easily the trashiest thing on this list today. I'll say it right now. Trivia game released for consoles aimed at college dorms. You answer trivia. If you win, guess what? You get to see footage of girls at spring break, right? The game got pulled from shelves. That was real footage too, but not because of the rating board. It got pulled because of a lawsuit. One of the girls in the footage sued them, revealed she was 17 at the time of filming. That turned the game from a trashy trivia into very, just distributing illegal material. There was an injunction, copies were yanked, the developer went under. It's a reminder that when you play with real content instead of polygons, guess what? The legal risks, they're different. At number 11, Mortal Kombat in 1992. Let's wrap up this first batch before we get into the top 10 with the legend itself. Specifically, the home console ports here. This was a game that split the playground in half. Nintendo wanted to be family friendly. So on the Super Nintendo version, they turned the blood into gray sweat and removed the fatalities. That was lame. But Sega allowed the blood on the Genesis version, but they hid it. The game shipped with the blood turned off so they could sell it in toy stores. But every kid knew the code. ABACABB. You enter at the start screen, the text turns red, Scorpion yells, "Get over here," and suddenly you're ripping spines out. The code was a genius move. It let them follow the rules on the box while breaking them on screen. This was the ultimate example of flirting with the censors and absolutely winning. That's the first 10. We saw games censored for political satire. We saw games canceled for corporate image and games that accidentally broke the law. But we're not done. We're just getting started. The top 10 gets even weirder. We've got a game that Fox News calls a simulator for unmentionable acts, a game where you fight unbaptized babies, and the one game that actually pushed the boundary so hard, it got an AO rating for violence on Steam. If you're ready, let's go. At number 10 today is Dead or Alive Xtreme 3 in 2016. In a video like this, if you know gaming history, you knew I had to put it on the list. Now, the fighting game series was always known for it, the bouncy physics. But this spin-off series took that, and it made it the entire point. Here's the thing. This game is on the list because of a specific piece of technology called the Soft Engine 2.0. The developers at Team Ninja spent a ridiculous amount of resources building a physics engine dedicated entirely to skin deformation. They wanted to simulate how skin reacts when it presses against surfaces or how it jiggles when a character runs. It's a volleyball game on paper. In reality, it's a physics tech demo for, the mechanic isn't winning the match. It's unlocking owner mode where you can take photos and give the characters gifts to make them wear whatever you want. The controversy here, obviously, it predicted the publisher tech mode didn't even wait for the rating board to ban it. They just refused to release it in the West. They looked at the cultural climate in 2016 and said, nope, we're not going to deal with the backlash. It created a massive import market because people wanted to see what was so dangerous that they couldn't even buy it in English. It's on the list today because it represents self-censorship, the fear of the rating board being stronger than the board itself. At number 9, Dante's Inferno in 2010. This was EA's attempt to make their own God of War based on the classic poem. It's decent, hack and slash game, but there's one specific enemy type that landed the game in hot water. It's the unbaptized babies. I'm not making this up. When you get to the circle of limbo, you are attacked by hordes of unbaptized infants. They have blades for arms and they swarm you. Now in this game, you have this morality mechanic where you can either absolve enemies with a holy cross or you punish them with a Sith. If you choose to punish these enemies, the game triggered a finisher animation where the protagonist grabs a creature, and it's pretty gruesome. The rating board, they had a meltdown. The idea of interactive infant elimination was almost enough to get an AO rating. It sparked protests from family groups, even though the game argued it was just following the source material. It's a moment where the video game logic clashed hard with real-world morals. Fighting a dragon's okay. Fighting a baby, even a demon baby, well, I guess that feels wrong to people. At number 8, Catherine in 2011, a puzzle game. Yeah, from the people who made Persona. It's a game about a guy named Vincent who is cheating on his girlfriend with a mysterious woman who might be a demon. The whole game is a metaphor for the anxiety of commitment, but the mechanic that flirted with the line was the confessional. In between these puzzle stages, you're trapped in a booth. You're asked extremely personal questions. Would you forgive the cheater? Is marriage the end of life? Your answers are uploaded to a server, and you see a pie chart of how everyone else answered. It turned the game into this massive social experiment on infidelity. The rating board, they struggled with this one because the adult content wasn't just visual, it was thematic. The scenes between Vincent and Catherine are suggestive, using camera angles and sound design to imply everything without technically showing everything, right? But it flirted with the line of being an adult game in the literal sense, and it dealt with adult problems like, unplanned pregnancy, cheating, all of it. Themes that games usually avoid because they're messy problems and uncomfortable. At number 7, the Galgun Double Piece in 2015. This is an on-rail shooter like House of the Dead, but instead of shooting zombies with bullets, you're shooting anime girls. Yeah, with pheromone shots. The premise is that the main character's too popular. He has to fend off hordes of girls trying to confess their love to them. If they touch him, he loses energy. Sounds stupid, but then you get to the Doki Doki mode. This is a mechanic where you zoom in on a character and you have to rapidly tap on their body to fill the euphoria meter before it runs out. If you succeed, they explode in a burst of hearts. The game pushes that anime loophole because the art style is cartoony and stylized. It gets away with mechanics that would immediately be banned if the characters looked realistic. It's a game that exists entirely in the gray area of what is considered lewd versus cute. Makes you physically complicit in this very weird interaction. And honestly, playing it feels like you're getting away with something that you should not be allowed to do, which is exactly what they were trying to do. At number 6, Mass Effect. Yeah, Mass Effect, 2007. Specifically the first one. Now, if you played this game, you know it's this sprawling sci-fi opera about saving the galaxy, but if you watched Fox News in 2007, you would have thought it was an interactive activity simulator. There was a segment on Fox News where they brought in a psychologist who admitted she never played the game, but she claimed it featured full digital nudity and allowed players to engage in whatever they wanted. They called it they called it something, the scandal. The reality, if you romance a character, you get a scene that is tamer than a PG-13 movie. You see some blue alien side skin and a quick fade to black, and that's it. But the controversy, it was massive. Forced the developer BioWare to be incredibly careful with the sequels. It's on the list because it shows that a game doesn't even have to break the rules to get in trouble. It just has to let the player have a romance subplot. The perception of the mechanic was more dangerous than the mechanic itself. It proved that the mainstream media was ready to pounce on gaming at the slightest provocation. And now we arrive at the top 5. We've made it, and we outlasted most of the video. See what I did there? At number 5, Outlast 2 from 2017. Now, the first game was already intense, but the sequel ran into the brick wall, which was Australia. And the reason why? Very specific. In Australia, the rating board refused to classify the game, which effectively banned it. They cited a scene involving a ritual. The report they released in Legendary is legendary because it describes in clinical detail a scene where the main character witnessed creatures engaging in, let's call it aggressive rhythmic activities in a forest. Board said it constituted implied violence of a very specific nature. The developers, Red Barrels, had to go back and edit the footage. They didn't remove the scene, but they changed the camera angles and obscured the action so you couldn't actually see what was happening. It's on this list because it highlights this weird gray area. You can show heads exploding, you can show torture, but the moment you mix violence with that act, the rating board shuts it down. Outlast 2 found the exact limit of what you can show in a horror game. They found it, and they found it by stepping right over it. At number 4, Postal 2 in 2003. This game is the definition of trashy, but it's also a masterpiece of offensive physics. It was banned in New Zealand, and if you owned a copy there, it was technically punishable by a fine. They cited gross, abhorrent content, including urination. There's a dedicated button to unzip your pants and relieve yourself. You can do it on people, food, cats, anything. But the mechanic that really pushed the envelope was gasoline. You could pour a trail of gasoline on the ground. You can lead it up to a group of people. You could throw the match. The fire physics were really good for 2003. You could watch the flame travel down the line, and you know the rest. The game didn't force you to do any of this. You could technically play the whole game as a pacifist. But the developers gave you a toolbox of absolute anarchy, and they dared you not to use it. It flirted with the rating board by saying, we aren't violent, you're violent. We just gave you the gas to do it. At number 3, Phantasmagoria 1995. We're going to go back to the 90s again. This was a game by Roberta Williams, the queen of adventure games. It came on 7 CDs. It was this massive interactive movie. It was dark. While Night Trap we talked about earlier was getting in trouble for things it didn't do, Phantasmagoria was doing them. There was a scene in the game involving the main character and her husband that's difficult to watch. It depicts a very realistic assault. Major retailers like CompUSA, they refused to stock it. Religious groups, they protested it. It was banned in Australia, of course, but here's the thing. It sold over 1 million copies. It's on the list because it proved that adult gaming was a viable market. It treated the player like they could handle a horror movie narrative. It was clumsy, yeah, and the acting was cheesy, but the violence and the themes, they were serious. It pushed the boundaries of what you could show on a computer screen before we even really had a rating system to police it. At number 2, Hatred in 2015. The name says it all. The game is unique because it didn't just flirt with the adults-only rating, it chased it. The developers' destructive creations made an isometric shooter where the only goal is to eliminate innocent people. No terrorists, no zombies, just people at a train station or a block party. The ESRB gave it an AO rating purely for violence. Usually AO is reserved for other kinds of content, but Hatred, it was just mean-spirited. I mean, so lacking in context, they slapped it with the death penalty rating. Now, Valve, they actually pulled it from Steam Greenlight. Then Gabe Newell himself stepped in to put it back up, citing freedom of expression. The game itself, it's boring. It's a mediocre twin-stick shooter, but the marketing was genius. They used the AO rating as a badge of honor. They wanted you to be offended. They wanted the controversy. This stands as the ultimate example of edgelord gaming using the rating board as your PR department. And at number 1 today, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas 2004, the game that changed the laws, the game that cost its publisher millions of dollars. I'm not talking about violence. We're not talking about the language. We're talking about hot coffee. When the game shipped, it was rated M, but buried deep in the code, locked away, where nobody was supposed to see it was a minigame. If you dated a girlfriend in the game and got your relationship level high enough, she'd invite you in for coffee. Now, in the normal game, that's cool. The camera stayed outside. But modders found a way to unlock the camera, and inside, there was a fully interactive rhythm game. Yeah, characters were fully clothed in the console versions, but the animations were undeniable. The fallout, it was nuclear. The ESRB changed the rating from M to AO, forced retailers like Walmart and Target to pull the game from shelves instantly. Rockstar had to recall the game and print new discs. Hillary Clinton held a press conference. Class action lawsuits everywhere. It's number one today because it showed that the red line isn't just about what you see on the screen. It's about what's on the disc. It forced the entire industry to change how they handle cut content. This proved that in the digital age, nothing is truly hidden. San Andreas flirted with the board, got caught, and the burn from that hot coffee is still felt by every developer today. So there you have it. Those are 20 games that poked the bear hard. Some did it for art, some did it for money, some did it because they good. And looking back, a lot of it seems silly now. We have games today that are way more violent than Manhunt, way more suggestive than Mass Effect, but the line, it keeps moving. What was adults only 10 years ago is just a Tuesday release on Steam today, but that invisible fence is there. It's just further out. And you know, somewhere right now, there's a developer writing code that's going to make the rating board sweat all over again. So I want to know what you guys think. Is there a game that offended you personally? Or do you think the rating board is just a relic of the past? You let me know in the comments, and I'll see you soon.